It was while I was driving through the vast yellow grass of the Great Plains that my life ended. I was on my way to see my parents who lived in a small town in western Iowa. The fastest route was straight down I-90 through South Dakota. I knew that it was going to be a long and exhausting trip, 14 hours to be exact, so I made sure to pack plenty of snacks and drinks. I always hated stopping too often and making an already long road trip even longer. I know the first thing that some of you are going to say, why didn't you just fly? Well, if you're from any of the states in the middle of the country, you would know that you never fly so long as your destination is on the same continent. But now, after all that I've been through, I really wish that I had flown. It's a mistake that I can truly say will haunt me for the rest of my life. I was on a particularly empty stretch of the interstate. There were no other cars on the road with me, not even driving westbound on the other side. Absolutely nothing to see, and I was used to it. I listened to a podcast about something that I don't even remember, and I slowly slipped into a classic case of highway hypnosis. I don't know for how long, and I don't know what snapped me out of it. All I know is that I got a sudden sense that something was off. I checked the usual suspects. My phone still had plenty of reception, and my car was at almost a full tank of gas. With those being the two things that usually snap you out of that interstate trance, I went back to doing nothing. And then I realized what it was. What wasn't there? I hadn't seen a single car in minutes. Obviously, that doesn't sound scary when I say it. It really wasn't. But it was very strange. I had gone an extraordinarily long time in the middle of the day, on a Saturday without seeing a single car. My brain told me not to worry, that it was perfectly ordinary and that I would see someone else sooner or later. And heck, maybe I saw a bunch of cars in the last few minutes and just zoned them out. But then I noticed something else that was missing. Something that I absolutely would have come across. Not a single exit, not a single billboard. And once I began to pay attention, not a single mile marker. That's when my stomach got a little uneasy, when my brain started sending out some serious red flares. I grabbed my cell phone from its mounted charger and switched apps to my GPS. I had left it on in the background to occasionally check the time and distance left on my trip. If I stared at it the whole time, I would drive myself crazy, pun intended. But if I switched over every once in a while just to see the numbers go down, it was like a little treat. A tiny dopamine rush to get through the slog. But when I switched to the app, I saw nothing on it but a straight line. No time until arrival, no distance to destination, not even a road label on the line through the screen. I slowed the car to a stop and turned on my hazards. Then after a moment of hesitation, I pinched my fingers on the screen to zoom out and see. Once again, nothing but a straight line, no matter how far I went. It was impossible that I was on anything else but I-90. But it made absolutely no sense that there were no drivers, signs, exits, or literally anything other than yellow grass fields. I got out of my car and I looked around. I kicked at the pavement, which to me seemed completely ordinary. And then I realized that my phone probably just lost signal, and that's why my GPS app was acting up. I even chuckled to myself for being so dramatic as I looked to the top right corner of the screen only to see a full connection. A million thoughts ran through my mind. Some of them were less sane than others. I closed out the app and reopened only to be met with a pop-up that I had never seen before. No GPS connection. I double-checked, but obviously my location settings were still on. I hadn't touched them since I had started my trip. I had no need to. Yet still, my phone couldn't place me. I dialed in my mom's number. My heart rate raised just slightly with every chime of the tone, but to my relief, I heard the familiar voice of my mother answering. We talked for a bit and I told her what was going on. She laughed it off. It's very empty out there, you know, and those silly phones bug out all the time. Honestly, your generation puts too much trust in them. I rolled my eyes but thought that maybe she was right. Was it really out of the question that my GPS app had a server failure? I told her that I would get back on the road and call her when I was closer. We said our goodbyes. For some reason, I felt it especially important to tell her that I loved her before hanging up. As I got back into the driver's seat, I remembered one of the other details that really unnerved me. No exits. Sure, it's the middle of nowhere. No billboards. Fine, a little out of character for the Midwest, but possible. No mile markers, though. My brain's only logical justification was that when I was panicking earlier, time seemed to slow down and what felt like forever was actually less than a mile. Yeah, it was a stretch longer than the road that I was on, but it was the only possibility that I could think of to ease my worries. And so I set off, this time paying extra attention to my odometer. 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15. Eventually 50 miles. 50 miles without seeing a single green marker at the side of the road. I stopped my car again. I looked at my phone, which thankfully still had full connection. Mom, yeah, it's me again. No, I'm not any closer. Don't laugh, but this is really starting to freak me out. Would it be dumb to call the highway patrol? You know, just to see if they can look out for my car. Yeah, okay. I'll call you back after. Goodbye. Love you, Mom. I called the highway patrol. To their credit, they sent people out despite how crazy I must have seemed. The lady on the other end asked me what mile marker that I was near. I tried to explain to her that I couldn't find a mile marker, not a single one in over 50 miles. She asked me what the last town I remembered going through was. Murdo, I said, and then she told me to stay put and to turn on my hazards. I gave them the description of my car's make and model and I hung up the phone. Just for a moment before I called my mother back, I stared off into the distance, into the vast and empty plains. I realized I saw no hills, no trees, no shrubs. I described the situation to my mom. I told her everything and we talked for several hours about our plans when I arrived. About some drama between my mom and her coworkers. Anything that would make my situation seem normal. We went on until I got a call from the highway patrol. What the lady on the other end of the line told me shot my anxiety past anything leading up to this point. As I stared into the cloudless blue expanse and at the sun in the middle of the sky, what was unmistakably that same noon on a Saturday, the lady said to me, "We're calling off the search for the night because of the dark and the storm. If you're still in need of assistance, please call back." I hung up the line and I sat in silence. The dark, the storm. Eventually, I turned my car back on. The dashboard said 9:37. I had a half tank of gas now. That little orange needle bobbed ever so slightly back and forth as I thought. I made my decision and I shifted into drive, into and through the grassy median, onto the opposite stretch of road. Wherever I was, however I got there, I knew that I didn't want to go any farther into it. My best hope was to return the way that I came, and so I did. I drove and I continued like nothing was the matter until my music was interrupted by the jingle of a phone call. My dad. He told me that it was nearly 10 a.m. the next day. He told me how my mother was hysterical, how the highway patrol couldn't find me. He asked me what I was doing, what my surroundings looked like. Were there any defining features? I told him straight. There was nothing. The sun hadn't moved, not an inch. The road never curved or dipped. There were no signs and no animals and no clouds in the sky. Not a single rocky bluff or lone cottonwood tree. Nothing but empty grassland, twin belts of gray asphalt to split it, and me. I told him that my gas was almost out, and I joked that he should come and bring me some more. My worry only worsened when my usually jovial father couldn't spare a chuckle. We talked for a while, and he told me stories from my childhood. The first time that we played ball, the first time that he took me to work with him. I teared up when he told me how proud he was of what I had become. I had to stop the car. My throat was tight and nearly swollen shut from the sorrow. And then my mom took the call. She told me all about the day that I was born, every little detail. What time it was, how much I weighed, about what she ate for breakfast that day, and how hard I was to deliver, but also about how worth it all was in the end. I could hear her sobbing as she told me that she loved me, and I was a mess as I said it back. I told them that I would call again in a moment, that I needed to get my bearings right. And then I drove until the little orange needle kissed the E. I stared at the haunting 0 on my dash, the number that told me how many miles I had left, and I coasted it out as long as I could until my car had slowed to a stop. I didn't react. I just sat there munching on a granola bar that I had packed, and then I slipped into an uneasy slumber, and I awoke to the bright sun above me, into a car so sweltering that I could have easily overheated. For a while, I cooled down in the little sliver of shade on the side of my car. And that's when I stared down at the pavement. I studied every minute detail, every crack and dip. There wasn't a single ant, no fly in the air, not any kind of bug. I emptied my car of all the food and drinks that I had, put it all in one of my duffel bags that I emptied of clothes that I no longer needed. As I slung the bag over my shoulder and continued my journey on foot, I realized that I had to take this last chance to warn anyone else. 100% battery. I left it on the charger as I drove because I knew deep down that once this device ran dry, I would lose all connection to the outside world. Before this phone is dead, I will call every person that I can think of. I will say my farewells. I will forgive what I can. I will hope to be forgiven. It's a better end than most get, I suppose. Maybe somehow my loved ones will get some closure too, though I doubt anyone will ever truly understand what has become of me. But I didn't want my mother to blame herself. I didn't want her to live the rest of her life in grief. So I did call her back. I told her that I had found an oasis, cool water, so many animals to eat, so many trees to use. I told her that even though we'll probably never see each other again, that I will be alive and well over here. As I told her all those fairy tales, while simultaneously staring at the same expanse of nothingness, we both knew that I was lying, but neither dared to say so. At this point, I am certain that I will die. Will I go slowly from starvation or from thirst, or find a way to end it sooner? Will I cling to the last shred of life that I have left, fill my mouth with prairie grass, slog on until the malnutrition takes me? I'm not sure. My delusional mind still wants to debate. It wants to believe these are choices that I won't have to make. But deep down I know that's where this path will take me. Though I do not know where this cursed road leads, I do know where it will end. At least, where it will end for me. And so, now I write this all out. I write it as I sit in the corner of the road, so far that even my car is now lost. I eat the last of my rations, and I leave you with one final message. Never take this road. Never follow it into the middle of nowhere. And if you must do so, pray that you do not end up where I have. To everyone who knew me, goodbye.